You're listening to 101 Part-Time Jobs with me, Giles Bidder, and I'm so excited to have Samuel T. Herring from Future Islands on today's episode. As you're about to find out, Sam is an absolute gentleman. We get into some of the old jobs he had before the band and during the sort of early days, some personal life lessons he had along the way, and all about how their new record, As Long As You Are, which came out a couple of weeks ago, how it's all about reconciliation and learning from your mistakes and looking forward to a better place. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. As always, if you like it, you can rate it, you can review it, you can subscribe. But I think the best way to share a podcast is to tell your friends or tell your family. So please share it on your WhatsApp groups or what have you. That would be massively appreciated. East London's Signature Brew have been brewing music-inspired beers since 2011. They've made beers with Mastodon, I think that one's 9% or something stupid, Slaves, Idols, Sports Team recently. And if you go onto their website, signaturebrew.co.uk, you can get 10% off by using the voucher code 101podcast at checkout. I think that's for UK people only, not quite sure. I'm going there tomorrow, I'll find out. All right, enjoy yourselves. Here's Samuel T. Herring from Future Islands. Cheers. Hey, Sam, how you doing?
I'm good, Giles. How are you doing?
Yeah, wonderful. How was Friday night for you? I know I had a good time.
Friday night was awesome. And it felt really strange, but there's something that always happens too, just like the day that you release a record. I think I was just like giddy all day, just so excited to, share the art with the world, get it out of the system. Once you release a record, then you can start writing new songs. So then it's like, oh, we're fresh again. I'm a fresh baby now.
Yeah, fresh guy. Have you got any traditions when it comes to releasing records?
And nah, we don't really have. I don't think Future Islands really has any particular traditions that we do with. I mean, I guess playing a show is the tradition, so we did get to do that. I mean, that's been this strange part of all of this, which is just that we are supposed to be in the middle of a tour, but we aren't able to do that. So, and we had originally not planned on doing any live streaming when the pandemic first hit, because we just felt that maybe it would pass and we would save it for when we could hit the road again. But then, realizing that wouldn't happen, I was really happy that we were able to get the live stream up and running and do something really special, because it is a time to celebrate. It's a time to, celebrate all the hard work and do something for the fans,
Absolutely. And I don't know if this is just, I mean, you can tell me if this is just me thinking this, but I felt after a few songs, you could see you get more into it, feel comfortable there.
Yes, definitely. I mean, because I definitely I watched back and was like, yeah, once it takes a couple songs, and then I think once I think we played Dream third. Once Dream hits, then I just like starting to hit the stride again, and even more so watching back on the encore, I was like, oh, that's really like I feel really comfortable here. You know what I mean? Like this feels really, really good, because there's no lights, there's no camera movement. It's just like let me perform to the room, Yeah. So these kinds of things are, I mean, I always look back on performances. I watch like Future Islands performances, like athletes watch game film,
Really?
I want to see the things that work and the things that don't work. And
yeah, makes sense.
And just get a sense of like, oh yeah, that was good. This was awesome. So it was really fun to look back on Saturday and check it out.
So, I mean, this year has thrown so many curveballs, it's not even worth saying that, putting into words. But what it does make me think of is how long you've been a band. And this is your 6th record. And so when did the band start to become your full-time job?
Well, I guess by 2010 was really when we kind of, we realized that we were going to be able to do this, that was the point where we're like, oh, I think we can actually live off of this music thing. But in like 2008 was when we first started hitting the road. But from 2008 to the beginning of 2010, so I would say our first US tour was July, August of 2008. And then we just went on the road for like 5 years straight.
And what were those tours like? Were you booking those yourself?
Yeah. So William booked, our bass man. He booked the shows until from 2006, and even our band that we had before Future Islands, Art Lord and the Self Portraits. He booked all of those shows, and then he booked us until the end of 2010, I think was
Wow.
the last tour that he booked. So like Into an Evening Air, and then we finally got a booking agent. So I mean, William actually booked around 600 or 700 shows for Future Islands and Art Lord and the Self Portraits. And those early shows, I mean, we were playing, especially like the first US tour. I mean, we were playing to like 10 to 15 people a night, in places all over the US. But then again, sometimes we'd roll into like Los Angeles or New York or just some of the bigger cities, and you would get to play to like 150, 200 people. And it was like those kinds of moments. But I mean, we were making, for a couple years, we were probably making anywhere from $30 to $100 a night as a band, so
wow.
it was not a it wasn't like money you split up, it wasn't like,
right,
here's your $15. It was like, okay, all the money just goes to the band fund, and the band fund pays for gas and it pays for food. And then, and then at the end of the tour, we'll split up if there's anything left. And, I remember doing that for probably 150, 200 shows before we came home from a tour, and we're like, whoa, like I got like $300. This is awesome.
Yeah.
But coming back from those tours, we would always be going, straight back to work, straight back to jobs until about 20. I mean, well, no, because I mean, 2010, we were on the road. So 2010, we that was when we kind of got to the point where we didn't have to do that. And that lasted till about 2012. But then when we took 2013 off to write our album Singles, then we all had to go back. Well, I had to go back to work. I think William might have gone back to work.
That's interesting that you've kind of got this kind of, it's like a balance in the weight, right? The whole time.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, it was funny because, after touring for, from middle of 2008 to the end of 2012, we went for, making 40 or $50 at the beginning of that to, coming like making, $1,000 or $2,000 a show. But still on a smaller level, we were still just like touring in like a Chevy Astro van, driving ourselves around and all this stuff, selling our own merch, making our own merch a lot of times still. Wow. And these kinds of things. So coming, when we got off the road in 2012, we like actually had money in the bank, like individually. We had saved up some money. So that's why we got off the road and we took the time to write this album. But so I was like, I've got this money, like I can live forever.
Yeah.
And then it lasted about 6 months and I was dead broke. Like I never had money in my life, and I was just like, it disappeared so quickly. And then I had to go back to work. I'm not gonna give any spoilers just yet. Well, I know we're gonna get into it. I won't tell you what I was doing.
But I wonder from a social aspects point of view, having friends and family who are like, oh, you're in a band, there is this rock and roll star thing that is just so flippantly kind of, probably not outspoken, not maybe not even said out loud, but there is this kind of expectation. If you're touring all the time, you're fine. You live in it, quote unquote. So is that something that you kind of had an inner battle with yourself? The fact that you were doing it so much, obviously that requires so much self-motivation, time, money for practice rooms, van hire, or buying a van. Looking back now, how do you think you navigated that?
Well, it's just like anything, any kind of little boost along the way, you may play, like I said, you may play the 20 or 30 shows on a tour and 15 of them are like, there's nobody there or the sound was bad, but maybe you had like the most fun night, and you're doing it with your buddies. But then you have that transcendent show. You have, you get the chance to finally perform to a big crowd of people, and they don't see you as just some scummy band. They're actually, because you came from a different place and because they've never heard of you before and you're putting on a show, they think that you're somebody, they give you that they give you that feeling that what you're doing means something. And then you get, over time, you start to get the feedback from the fans. You start to get people that you've met at a show are back, or you've seen them 2 or 3 times, or, it's just like all of these, it's all the little things that allow you to keep going, to make you think like we can do this, it's the little pats on the back. It's the people that who come up to you and say, your music really, it means something to me. Like that's the thing that keeps you going. Cause I mean, there were times in 2010 that I wanted to quit. There were times in 2012 I wanted to quit. There were times in 2014 I wanted to quit. And there's a lot of things that we sacrifice out on the road, and years that we don't get back. But you choose a path in life and you follow it, and you try to have as few regrets as possible.
Yeah. And the whole time you're growing up, and a big part of growing up is finding your identity, or feeling like you have some kind of identity.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Was the band always kind of your identity from nearly the beginning?
In a way. I mean, the funny thing is, when I went off to college, I was a rapper. That was what I wanted, like, musically, but as a person, I was an artist and I was an MC. And then being in a band wasn't a thing that I aspired to. It wasn't a thing that I wanted to do. And my first priority was making art, and then maybe I would make some music along the way, but I never expected it to be with a band. So it was, my identity at that point was pretty strong. Like, I'm a visual artist and I rap, and that's what I do. So it would be a few years before I felt like kind of comfortable, because even the first band that we started was began more as a performance art piece than a band, and then people really liked the band, so we kept doing it, and then when that band ended, it felt like a hole in my heart. It felt like a hole in my person. It was like, this thing that I've been doing for 2.5 years is done, and I feel like I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. And
you must have remembered a time when being in a band didn't involve having everything on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So how did you adapt to that?
I mean, I don't know if we adapted well. We're kind of, so with the time that we came up was a real transitional period of the world kind of going, like, I remember our buddy Herbie, who's the singer in this group Valiant Thor, who's another like rock and roll band from Greenville, North Carolina. And they had, when we got to school, they were the band. And then they graduated out of graduate school. Herbie and Tyler were both like amazing painters. And so they graduated out of school and they went off and they hit the road hard. And one of the really cool things, after a few years of we were doing Art Lord, Herbie basically offered his black book of phone numbers to William, because William was booking shows.
BookYourOwnFuckingLife.com.
Yeah, exactly. And was like, these are numbers you can call, and you can call these, and you can just book shows over the phone. And William's like, this is crazy. Because William booked a ton of shows through MySpace. Back in the day, you do show trades. You like find a band in a city and like, hey, you guys sound cool. Like, could you want to play a show with us? And then you can come to Baltimore and play a show here, and we'll play with you or whatever. So like these kinds of things. But we definitely, we weren't young enough to catch on to the fact that you can just do everything kind of through the internet. But we weren't old enough to know exactly how to figure it out, because it was like the old way, because it was kind of a dying way. Yeah. So we're really navigating it at a weird time, and just trying to figure it out, which in a way, I mean, looking back, I think it was helpful because we learned a lot, and because we learned a lot, we were able to kind of grow a little bit more organically as a band, and as artists, and not feel the pressure as much, because I mean, we really felt like we were in our own world until 2014. I mean, with the Letterman performance, that really broke us to a larger part of the world. But before that, I mean, we were just like an underground band who was doing it, and we knew that people cared about what we did, and we were selling some records, but we were kind of happy just being these underdogs, and just doing it in the underground, doing it kind of like this is the old school way of doing things, and having that feeling. But yeah, we also we're getting eclipsed very quickly by bands that were much younger than us, because they had grown up in just a completely different universe. And we're just like, oh man, I think we're doing this wrong for a lot, through my late, or until I was probably about 29, from like 23 to 29, it just felt like, are we doing this all wrong? Like, I don't even know.
And that's a strange period of time for living anyway.
Yeah, that's true.
Even if you do have a kind of, I don't know. I'm 29, and I've definitely questioned myself in the last year a lot less than my early 20s. My early 20s, it's a fucking train wreck sometimes. The way you think about yourself and trying to figure out what you're doing, comparing yourself to other people. Like being like, what is going on here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's not only. I mean, really, it says a lot about me and William and Garrett's friendship to push through, because, when Future Islands began, we started with a drummer who was with us for about a year and a half. And then when we moved to Baltimore, shortly before we started moving to Baltimore, he quit the band, and we tried to get another drummer, and it just didn't happen. And we had a temporary drummer for a minute, for 3 months before our first US tour. And then he quit the band 2 weeks before the tour happened. And so Garrett just had to go and make beats for all the songs, like these songs that we, because Garrett was already using Reason, which is the program that he uses to build drums and keys still with Future Islands. So he was already doing that with his solo music. But so when our drummer quit, we're like, Garrett, looks like you got to just go to work, get to work, Garrett. And he was just like, what the fuck?
I mean, that just shows how much is riding on all of you just to make it happen.
Exactly. But because of that, because of that tour, so that we went off on the road with these new beats that we had never performed over. And it felt really very strange for a couple weeks. And then it kind of got a little more, it felt a little better. It took us a while to get comfortable and then play off of these mechanical style electronic beats. But then after that, we were like, cool, it's just the three of us. We don't need a drummer. We can just keep going. And we toured as a 3-piece from middle of 2008 till the beginning of 2014. So those were our most formative years as a band. And because of that, it allowed us to travel extremely light, to have one less mouth to feed, to just, because me, William, and Garrett moved to Baltimore with that shared dream and that shared vision of making this band a reality, making it a thing that is our lives. And once we kind of were like, well, it's just the three of us now. It felt good because we all trusted one another in that. So those long drives and sleeping on dirty floors every night for months, it was like we are doing this together and we all want the same thing. And yeah, but you always have your ups and downs, and you question things like bouts with homesickness and feeling away from things. But I think you fight with that when you're just working a 9 to 5 as well. What am I doing? So
absolutely,
it's just a part of life.
Working with the drum machine, did that open up the vision to the sound, to the music, to where it could go?
Definitely. Well, it just it's kind of like you were saying, it just kind of put it more in our own court. It allowed us to take a little bit more time to write, take a little bit more time to think. And the thing was, Art Lord and the Self Portraits, our first band was built around a Yamaha keyboard that ran all of the drums. So we came from a band that didn't have a drummer. And then we started Future Islands with a drummer, and then we kind of went back to it. So we in a sense, we were learning, for me in particular, my stage presence was much more vibey with the electronic drums in our first band. And then we got a drummer, and all of a sudden we became like a punk band. And so my performance became very raw and aggressive and more yeah, just more propulsive. Like the drums really like pushed me forward in a whole new way. And then the drums got taken away. And so then I'm like, how do I keep pushing without this force pushing me forward? Like without the force of drums behind me actually pushing me, how do I continue to do this? So that was part of it. But so yeah, at 2000, so in 2008, going on those first tours, we did 4 months of touring, and then when we got back from that, we started to write what would become our second album, In Evening Air, which was for us a really defining moment of our sound, of our new sound. It was the first time that me, William, and Garrett wrote as a Focus 3-piece. To that point,
was it a given that you were going to do a second album? Did you have to kind of decide, are we carrying on this band, or was it like, we're definitely going to do this, obviously?
Well, I mean, when I moved to Baltimore, part of me moving to Baltimore wasn't like it wasn't a band move. I just mean like, it wasn't like we're going to move to Baltimore. I called William one day and said, hey man, like I'm tired of I basically I want to make music, and I'm tired of waiting for Future Islands to do something. So I'm going to move to Baltimore, and I'm going to start a new band, and go after this. And then William was like, dude, that's what I want to do. And I was like, cool, we can start a band together. So then William actually beat me up to Baltimore by about 3 or 4 months. And then I moved up, and when I got there, we started talking to Garrett about him moving up. And then Garrett, he was in a long-term relationship at that point. And then they split up, and then we Garrett was miserable, and we convinced him to move to Baltimore. So in the end, what happened we ended up the three of us ended up being in Baltimore. And we went after this thing. I mean, we literally had a meeting. I've talked about this in interviews before, but we literally had a meeting where it was like, I've said to the guys, like, I want to do this thing. I want to go after this band and make it real. Do you guys want to do that? And they were like, I want that. I want that. So we kind of made, we just came clean and said, this is what we all want. Let's go after it. So that was, that was like a real, and having that element of kind of a shared vision, and that element of trust in that vision, that we are all in the same place, that we all want the same thing, was a huge part of the success and our ability to kind of push forward with this band in those early years.
What was your life like in Baltimore day to day, not off tour?
Well, so when I moved to Baltimore, I was living in Asheville, North Carolina, in the mountains of North Carolina before that. And I was working at a concrete shop in Asheville, fabricating concrete countertops and sinks, wow. And then some other crazy projects like chimney caps and stuff.
Work.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful work, heavy duty work. And my boss, when I told him that I was leaving, he was kind of bummed, because I'd been with him for a little while and I was doing well at the shop. But I told him I was moving to Baltimore, and asked him if he knew anybody that did this kind of work in Baltimore. And he was like, actually, I met a guy at a conference who has a concrete studio in Baltimore, a really nice guy. I can set you up with him. So when I moved to Baltimore up in January 2008. I had a job interview, like my second day in town. And then I got the job. So I pretty much went immediately to work, in February the funny thing is it was like, so when I moved to Baltimore, I went up, and we were going to do a 2-week tour. And then after the 2-week tour, I was just going to sleep on the couch at William's house until I could, get a place of my own to stay. So I went up there and did like a 3 or 4 day rehearsal with the guys. Garrett came up and like one of these temporary drummers. And while I was there for the 3 or 4 day rehearsal, that's when I did the job interview. And then so I went on tour for 2 weeks, and the day after I got back from tour, I had to go to work. It was a Monday morning.
Wow.
So I just went to work and worked. I was working at this concrete shop I worked there on and off from 2008 up until, the last time I worked there was 2014 even. So I was pretty much full time until 2009. And then I was kind of a part-time worker. And then it got to a point where I was coming home in like 2012 and 2013 and calling my old boss and being like, do you need a hand in the shop? And he's like, nah, no, but you can go on this job with me. And just like it was really like the nicest boss I ever had. It was a great guy. This shop called Luke Works. And Mark would seriously he would put me in he would have to deliver and install some concrete countertops and would put me in the truck, and I would drive around with him for a day and barely do anything. I basically just talked to him while he did all the work. And then he would give me $100 at the end of the day. And then just look at me with really sad eyes and be like, call me in a couple weeks if you need some more work. And I'm like, thanks, Mark. Yeah, he's a really good guy. Honestly, that he kind of saved me at the end there. Cause I didn't really know what was going to happen. There's so many other stories in here. Like I had major knee surgery in 2010. And I just couldn't work. And so I couldn't work. I couldn't tour. I was just laid up in bed. And then
how long for?
Well, I was only in bed for like 2 weeks, but I was an ACL reconstruction. So, I was out of commission for a while, but honestly, we went on tour, I think 2.5-3 months after I had an ACL reconstruction. You can find pictures from that time, and I'm wearing a full, like a full leg brace, on my leg because I was still doing physical therapy like while on the road.
And was that okay with insurance and everything?
I'm American. I don't have insurance. What are you talking about?
Well, right. I don't know, but it seems to be this, I don't know, grew up watching Jackass and you look back and you're like, wow, what were those people doing? But if you hurt yourself, if you hurt your leg, how do you deal with that?
I didn't have, that's kind of the thing is I didn't have I didn't have a choice. It was either go out on the road and make some money so that I can live, or give up the dream. You know what I mean? So it's like, we just have to go on the road. We have to figure this out. I'll just try to jump around less. That didn't really work, and at some point on probably like 3 months into touring, I like lost the full leg brace, because part of injuring your ACL or getting a reconstruction or whatever is the mental aspect of it. It's the psychological, thinking that you're going to do something and then your leg is going to be in complete pain again, or you're going to fall over or whatever. So just like getting back to the mental point where you believe you can do the things that you can do. So then once I was terrified to go without the leg brace, and then I lost it, probably just like drunk somewhere. I probably took it off and was like waving it around or something and just left it at a bar. I don't know what happened to it, but then I had to very quickly, get very comfortable that my leg was just going to have to be what it was. But I tore my ACL again in 2015. So I've been without that again for 5 years touring and stuff. So
what other stories from working? You mentioned earlier you teased a job that I don't know anything about this, by the way, and that your PR didn't say anything to me about any particular surprise jobs you had, but you kind of hinted at you teased the one earlier.
No, I didn't know where I was going to start. I've only, I've had the very normal jobs in my life. So when I dropped out of college, that was always the agreement with my parents, for both me and my older brother. It was like, and I knew that it was true because my older brother went through it, was that if you dropped out of school, then you have to, you aren't getting any money. Right. It's like that, that $100 a week or $200 a week for like food and rent disappears. If you aren't in college. So when I dropped out of school, I kind of got kicked out of school, but I kind of dropped out. they were going to kick me out if I didn't drop out, basically.
Was that because you just weren't really doing the assignments, or?
Yes, exactly.
Happens.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't going to class, so they didn't like that. So yeah, when I dropped out of school, my first like real job, I worked at a sandwich shop. It was called the Met Deli. It was in Greenville, North Carolina, and I basically was a dishwasher and a sandwich maker. And I did like, some preps. I would prep like some of the soups and, just like
that is good life skill. To make a good sandwich is a true skill.
This is true. And I had food, which was a key component. There was always food that I didn't have to worry about.
Love that.
But that job was really weird and dark. And at that time I had bad drug problems, and I was also selling drugs. And then at the same time does that count as a job?
Yeah. On this podcast,
kind of, yeah. At the same time, I started to realize that my boss, who was, probably late 40s guy who, was recently married and had a small child. Like, he was then, using drugs, and then he was buying drugs for me. And then I was like, what am I? And I'm making $6 an hour anyways, I was just like, what am I doing here? Like, this is the darkest, saddest place. I'm like working at a sandwich shop in a strip mall that no one comes to. And my boss is like blowing his life away. And this is really sad. So, yeah. So it was just like, it was really dark. I'm like, what am I doing? Cause I went from being 2.5 years before, I was like, I'm going to be a great artist. And then I'm like, I'm going to be a great musician. And then now I'm like making sandwiches and washing dishes. And my boss is taking me off the clock while I go get him a bag of weed. And I'm like, could you at least leave me on the clock while I'm like, what are you doing, asshole?
And I imagine when you're doing something like that, it's quite easy to slip into that thing where you're, it's the looking glass theory. You're seeing yourself how you might think other people are seeing you in that particular moment.
Well, that's actually that is an interesting point. I mean, I think the people I was most worried about the way they saw me were the people that I was actually working with, because I was just like, I do all this other cool stuff. I'm not, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Yeah. I don't really understand. But I mean, I ended up leaving that job and getting a job at a really nice restaurant as a dishwasher. But the funny part is I went from being like one of a group of humans who were all on drugs and even at work to being the one guy who was on drugs in the dish room of this place. But the thing is, if you've ever worked in restaurants, then you know that they're full of like drugs and alcoholism. And there's just like, that like crazy chef thing is a real thing in a lot of ways. Or at least that stereotype makes itself real. But so I ended up working at this restaurant, and I was like the sole dishwasher. And, I was eating filet mignon off people's plates, that they would send back that they, only ate half, or like eating shrimps and French fries. And whenever the bartender, who was my buddy, whenever he'd mess up a drink, he would put it on my little shelf in the back for like my after work drinks. But I mean, they were there, so I was sipping on them.
Of course.
So I was just like, and it was such a weird time, because then I really became the dishwasher, and it was like, this is my little room and I reign over it. Like, you must ask before you can pass through here. It was like, it gave me a little bit more station. I had my own station in life. But still, I was battling with these drug problems. I just had problems with cocaine and couldn't stop. And, I also realized that too. I was like, being a dishwasher leads to either like heavy drug abuse or psychosis. And I was on my way. How
did you get out of that then?
I kind of had a mental break one day. And so there was a day I'd been working there for about 6 months. I've been working there about 6 months. I was about to go on a tour. I was about to go on tour with Future Islands. And I was talking to my boss. He came, it was like the end of a Friday night. So we were going late. And he's all, the kitchen's all done, all cleaned up. And I'm just doing the last bit of dishes in the dish room. And he comes in to talk to me about the fact that I've been late a lot. And, you know, this is like, I'm late for a job that starts at like 5 p.m. You know what I mean? I'm like, hey, like I'm going on tour soon. And I just want to be sure that I'm going to have a job when I get back. And he's like, well, actually you aren't. Like, you're not going to have a job. And I was like, oh, for real? Like, what are you talking about? And at the same time as this is happening, I'd split up with the girl I was dating, maybe 2 or 3 months before, but she had, so we split up and then she, at the same time, like after we split up, she became best friends with the chef's wife, who they were about the same age. Like this, my partner, my ex partner was 9 years older than me. So I'm like 21, she's 30, and the chef's wife is like her age. And I had always told her, like, you guys should be friends. Like, she's really cool. Maybe you guys would get along. And then she never talked to this person until after we split up. Then they become best friends. So she's hanging at the bar. So as my boss is telling me that I am not going to have a job, and I'm thinking about how I don't have any money. I don't have a job now very soon. Within a week. I just hear my ex partner just cackling at the bar, and it was just like everything was in slow motion, just like, no, you won't have a job. And I just like, my whole world is spiraling. And the whole thing was so that night, like I had spent my last $50 that I had on my person. I probably had like, $30 in my bank account, $50 on my person. I had called a dealer and had him meet me in the parking lot, and I, got a bag of Coke and I haven't touched it yet. It's been in my pocket for 2 hours. Cause I'm already going through something. Like I'm already feeling miserable. I'm feeling in the depths. And then I'm finding this out. You won't have a job. You, like your ex-girlfriend is torturing your life at the bar that you work at this fancy restaurant. And on my way home, so I drove home, these lights were flashing behind me in the car. Like so I pull over towards my house, and this car pulls up behind me, and I look at my side, I roll down my window and look at my side mirror, because I don't know what's happening. I'm like, what is this, a cop? What is going on?
Yeah.
And it's my buddy. My buddy runs up to my window. He's like, hey Sam, how you doing, man? What's going on? What's going on? Where are you coming from? And I'm just like, what's up, T? Like, I just got off work, dude. And he's like, hey man, do you have any Coke? You have like, I'm just trying to get a little something. And I just like reached in my sock and handed him this bag. And I was like, you can just take it, just have it. And he was like, oh shit, what do I owe you? And I was like, you can just have it. Just have it. And so he just was like, thanks, and jumped in his car and just like peeled out.
Sam, it's been a total pleasure hearing these stories, and I wish we could talk more.
Oh no, is this it?
This is it. I've got this. I'm late for this meeting that I've already got. Oh, no. I'm so sorry. Unless you want to carry it on in an hour.
Yeah, let's carry on in an hour. Because cool. I got to finish this story.
Brilliant. I'll see you in an hour then. Same link?
All right, cool. Yeah, same
Sam,
link.
thank you so much.
All right, peace, brother. But no, basically what happened is I gave away this bag, and then I went home and I was having a total meltdown mind crisis. I took a shower. I went and met William and Garrett at a party that was going on. By this point, it was like, because I got off work like 1:30 in the morning, probably like 2:30. I met the guys at a party. I told them that I was having a breakdown basically, and I have a bad drug problem, and I need to go home and see my parents, and basically like asked them, is it okay? And they're like, yeah, of course it's okay. We know that you have a problem. So I went home, I went back to my folks' house and slept in my childhood bed, and woke up and told them that I had a bad drug problem. So they helped me get clean. I just stayed there for a couple of weeks and got cleaned up.
That is so brave.
Yeah, well, it was also it might have been brave, but also my parents are, they had allowed themselves to be that for me. Like, I don't know if I always felt comfortable to share that, but at that point I knew that I had to share and that they would be there for me, and they were. So they helped me get cleaned up, and then basically I went on that tour that I said I was going to go on, and then I lived out of my van for about 6 months, and around the same time I was starting to date somebody who lived far away, and then we moved up to Asheville together, and that's where I had my job. I was a Domino's pizza guy.
Brilliant.
Domino's pizza driver. And I got really big. I like swelled up a lot. Like I'm about I'm like 90 kilos right now, but I think when I was at Domino's I was probably like 105, 110 kilos. Yeah, I was just eating pizza all the time and sitting around driving. Yeah, I was just like
pizza and beer, two of the best things, are also the things that really really get to you. They get to me, certainly.
They live on your body for years. They just stay there. You never get rid of it. But yeah, so that was, I mean, yeah, that's just kind of the sum. It was kind of funny though, because when I moved to Asheville, I moved there with my partner. We were completely broke. And it was one of those things where it was like, I have to get a job right now. So I was like, tomorrow I'm going to go out and I'm going to go to every pizza joint that I can until I can get a delivery job, because I know that I can just have money in my hand. Basically.
And Asheville and Greenville, I played a gig once. It was like a house show where one of the acts was a circus freak show, and it was awesome. But when we were hanging out there, they seem like quite desolate towns.
Well, Greenville is. Asheville's more of it's kind of a hippie, like super liberal hippie community. So it has a little bit more culture, but it's a different culture. Greenville was just like, college town, like the epitome of a college town, and like a drunk tank, like a living drunk tank, just like nothing to do but get wasted. So yeah, very, very different kinds of places, but that's where, like, my brothers lived in Asheville for years. So I kind of moved up there to be at a place where I was a little bit closer to family, but very far from the city I lived in, where I had all these issues, like I couldn't go back. That's part of the reason that we moved to Baltimore, because we couldn't decide on a place to live in North Carolina, because I was kind of too scared to be near Greenville, because I knew that if I got an urge in the middle of the night, then I would literally drive 2 hours to go get drugs, so I had to literally be 6 hours away from Greenville so that I wouldn't, so that just took that off the table. Like I couldn't do that. Like I needed to be far away, but at the same time we were trying to keep this band together. So that's kind of the reason why when we moved up to Baltimore, prior to moving to Baltimore, I was really feeling like the band wasn't going to happen. Like it was kind of done, because I couldn't be near enough to the guys where they lived and they worked. And, William was still in school, to make this thing work in a way. And then I, when I said I wanted to move, William, I guess, was already thinking about it, and things kind of worked out. But I only lived in Asheville for a year, and, it was a big healing year, but it was definitely like the biggest creative drought that I've had in my life, in my whole life to this point, and it's a town full of creative people, but everybody is so stoned that it would be like, you'd be at the bar and you would talk to a friend and be like, yeah, we should get together and like make some music. And then you never hear from them again, because they just like forgot the conversation that they had.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, and so, yeah, I had to get to a place like Baltimore was happening with so many friends of ours who were, our good friend Dan Deacon was starting a whole thing in Baltimore, and was really pushing for us to get up there. And we just saw them, we saw all of these people that we knew from the road and friends we had made on tour and traveling through, doing the thing we wanted to do, staying, being on the road in their vans, like constantly, and making something happen, putting out records. Like, that's what we wanted to do.
Having that community seems so important, where you see other people doing it, and it is like, I want to be part of that. Was it a case of that, do you think?
Yes, definitely. I mean, not only is it important to have that kind of community, to be, because like in when we were in North Carolina, there's a lot of creation, but at the same time, there's not a lot of a spotlight there. I think there is now. I think the North Carolina scene has really changed since we were there. Like, I feel it being much more of a community driven space where people share more and they support each other more. But when we were coming up, we just got made fun of all the time because it was, it was kind of like a rock and roll. It's a guitar state, and we were playing with keyboards and people just thought we were a joke. And that was hard for us. I mean, we were like 19-year-old kids and just getting demolished in the local papers.
How to describe you as a band, I would say, you're the kind of band that might be featured on Pitchfork or Stereo Gum, but that doesn't do it justice at all. I mean, there are loads of bands that are featured on those sites, obviously, but it doesn't seem like there's like one particular place for you, which is a wonderful thing as a fan. But I wonder if that's hard at being on the other side of it.
Well, it's hard coming up, but at this point it feels, you like, if you survive that feeling, then you gain a lot of pride in that, like being able to feel like a ship against the wind, instead of like I said, you like playing into models or playing into trends, or, I mean, that was our whole thing always was, this is the kind of music we make. This is our sound, and we're going to stick with it. It doesn't really matter. Like the thing is, if you're trying to follow trends or follow, kind of what's happening in music, you're always going to be behind. You either have to, you kind of have to create blindly. If you're moving forward, you have to create really just like from yourself and believe in what you're doing and innovate that way, or do what you know and what you love and do it honestly. And I think we're definitely more in that camp of like, this is what we do. This is who we are. And it's going to find the people that it needs to find. But I mean, yeah, it's hard to not get that kind of championing when you're young, because you don't really know what you're doing. You just kind of blindly going for it, and believing in this thing. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah, we've never really fit into anyone's like categories of what works for music or what's like hot in music. And honestly, that bothered us when we were 26, 27 and just like really wishing that someone would give us a platform to reach more people. But like I was saying before, like by the time we were 29 years old, we realized that we were doing this. We made it the hard way, and we did it on our own. And because of that, we grew really organically. And I found myself being very envious as a 26, 27-year-old of other bands that were getting these legs up. And then I saw bands get completely swallowed by media cycles, like groups that got, put to the top, like this is the next big thing, only to be torn down a couple years later. And this is the kind of thing that hindsight gives you. But also finding myself at 29, seeing this happen to other groups that I, and being disgusted with my own envy. Looking back, I was like, well, maybe it was good that we didn't get the press and we didn't get the appreciation, because it really made us fight for what we made. It made us understand what we were doing. It made us appreciate what we gained, and not take for granted like the people that have supported us along the way and all of these things. And I mean, it really allowed us to get to this point. I think if we'd have had certain moments, certain opportunities earlier on, we might have squandered them. Or
you've been able to be yourself. I mean, I think that's something that I get from you on stage. It's a wonderful thing. I don't know. I think of my partner and I think of my best friends, and I think of these are people who, from for whatever reason, from the moment I met them, I was just myself. And there's that wonderful feeling that comes with that. And I think that it can be a hard thing to get through, especially in your 20s. But when you do it, there's so much joy that comes from that. And you can't regret that. You can't regret being yourself.
No. Well, that's the whole idea, I think, with this last record for us, which was finding self again and finding each other as a group, and being like, kind of like we were saying, coming to terms with success in a different way, coming to terms with the fact and speaking about the way everything has kind of changed, but how, like, where we are now. Because those friendships, friendships change. But it is really crazy. Like, we've done, me, William, and Garrett in particular have done so much together for so many years, like seen the world together. And there was a point like in 2016 and 2017 where we really didn't kind of like lost track of who we were, even though we were together like 50 to 60% of the time, because we're just on the road or in the studio all the time. You also get to that point where you're not communicating. And the thing about writing songs, if you're writing songs if you're writing songs for yourself, you're always going to appreciate those songs, and those songs they're going to really mean something, and it's going to mean something when you share them with people. And when you're if you're trying to write for an audience, you can really lose yourself and lose that appreciation. But I really believe in that kind of sincerity and honesty in the writing process, because it does make it something that grows with you. It's not only written down, but it grows with your life. And I'm really just realizing how, in a way, like Future Islands records are not just like singular records, but they do grow into this story of really our lives, of like the things that we are going through, the things we've been through, and the way that the stories change, like the stories keep going. It's not just written in a song, it's written in another song, and then it continues on in another song. And we keep, because it's really pulled from our lives. So we're changing with the music. I saw somebody's like a tweet that somebody put out that was like, Future Islands' new album is great, but it's like, when I think of Future Islands albums, it's just like one big album, and I love it. And it is like, and I never really thought about that, but it really, I mean, it was reading that kind of made me realize how, how the canon is, the body of work is, it is all one. And it because it is our lives, it's not, it's so personal. It's so deeply personal.
Do you think that, having a team around you, having the big indie label and having this, this team around you, have you been able to adapt to that in the way that you can kind of block that out and then get down to your purest form of writing? How have you learned to deal with, the business side of that?
Luckily, 4AD is awesome. And they, when they signed us, it was basically like, we've been monitoring you for a while, and we've been watching you. And they were, I mean, the whole thing with 4AD was they were like, you guys have already built it. We don't have to do the extra work. We don't have to like form a story around you or try to push you. We're just, our job is we just want to give you a bigger platform.
That's the ideal situation, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, just to be like, you guys just keep doing what you do, which is all we want to hear, just being able to be free to create the way we want to create. And so they've always given us that freedom and appreciated what we've brought to them. But also, like it gets scary with labels. Like I see other people fighting with contracts and things. And a big thing is, when you sign with a record label, you get a big advance. And a lot of people, like young artists, don't know that it's an advance. It's not free money. And they spend that advance, and then they say, can we get some money so we can go in the studio? And it's like, but that's what the advance was. And then what you get is you find yourself in a loan shark situation where you owe money to a label that says, well, we need a hit now. So because you owe us all this money. Being a band that didn't ever have that financial backing, we always made things on our own. And, like Singles was paid for. Like we actually got the advance for that record after the record came out, because
really?
we didn't want it. We didn't want the advance. We didn't want to be in debt to anyone. We didn't want to have that hanging over our heads. But also, we made that. I mean, that record was given to 4AD when it was done, and it was kind of like, this is the record that Future Islands is going to be putting out. Do you want to put it out? Do you want to be involved? And luckily that all worked out. But
brilliant.
But just to say, because of the time and because of the way we had to do things, the way we learned that you have to do things, we just, we learned a lot and learned about, kind of just not being in anyone's pocket. I mean, that's a hard thing in the art world, because artists struggle, like in all forms. We struggle and we need help sometimes. I mean, if anything, right now, all artists really need help. Just because of what the pandemic has done for so many people. I mean, everybody needs help right now. It's really intense, but yeah, I mean, just because of the way that things happen, we learned a lot. And the more in any field that you're in, the better off you are. The more you can learn, about situations. Because I can't even tell you how many people kind of come at you once you have a good thing happening. That's when people want to help you out. It's not when you really need help. It's when everything is going really good that people come out of the woodwork and say, this is what I can do for you. And it's like, well, you're late.
Were you all on the sort of same page with that? Did you deal with that quite well? Do you think? I mean, were you communicating with the others in the band, and when 4AD came along and when everything happened for you and the Letterman thing?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, we were really. The way that we made singles is to say how confident we were in what we had to offer. Putting down big money for the first time to go into a real studio to make a record that had no record label. It was like we were taking a really big chance and putting all of our chips on the table to follow this up. And it worked. I mean, in the bigger sense of just like finding a bigger label, having a moment. I mean, we expected things to really grow just organically larger by stepping to 4AD. We didn't know that we'd have like a viral moment that would propel it even quicker. But it took a long time to adapt. I mean, even up until really the making of this record was us finally coming to terms with the fact of how everything had really changed for us from 2014 to 2017. And we never really even dealt with it. We never talked about it with each other.
Not that I've been in that position, but it's just so easy to not talk about anything sometimes,
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that was the thing though, was we kind of all lost ourselves in all the bigger stuff. And it's something that I learned because of the pandemic and because of the way we made this record, which is that, I have issues with anxiety, and with like touring all the time and all this stuff. A lot of times you get these emails and these asks, whether it's press or new press photos or like music videos and all this stuff. And you're in the middle of a tour that's been going on for 6, 7, 12, 14 months. And you're like, could someone else just make this decision? Like, I don't have the mental capacity to do this. And I found that through this process of making this record, a lot of it was about us taking kind of responsibility for our actions. It was about us, and for me personally, really reading every single detail, thinking about it, making a decision that I stand behind, and whether or not my decision and what I think is right carries through, at least I took the time to make a decision instead of telling someone else to. Because what happens is you tell somebody else to make the decision, then you feel badly that you're not actually taking the time. Then you have anxiety that person is going to make a decision that you do not like, that you then have to follow through on. And you never even, if I just would have sat there and actually thought about what needed to be done, I would be happier. And so I found through this process and, going through this album rollout in the midst of a pandemic where we can't tour and we can't do all these things. It's, me and the guys are like, we'll do anything you need. We'll do as much media. We'll answer the emails. We'll talk about all of these things that usually we would put off. And it's made me feel so much less anxious. Like I'm not stressing out, and I'm feeling more confident about decisions, and I'm feeling more a part of the process. So actually doing more work is making me feel a lot better. It's making me feel like I'm a part of it. And I feel guilty that I didn't feel that way before, that I didn't work harder, but you have to live and learn and figure these things out.
And that's a really positive message for people listening to the record as well.
Oh, I hope so.
Absolutely. I think taking responsibility, especially in a world where you can write a tweet that lives forever and you took half a second to think about it.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, that's part of a lot of issues in the world, and just I mean, the state of America as it is, which is, if you talk about the deep social issues of America, it is about people protecting a history that they don't even understand, that they don't even want to take responsibility for. It's like you don't want to. Do you agree with that? Do you agree with the genocide of Native American people? Do you agree with the enslavement of African people to build this nation? Are you gonna stand behind that? Or are we actually gonna have a real conversation about understanding our histories, talking about our histories, and being honest with ourselves about what is being done? What are we protecting? Are we protecting ourselves, or are we hurting other people? Or are we actually ever moving forward if we don't come to terms with our past?
Feels like sometimes people just don't want to know. It's lazy, and I think that's another reason why I think that message of owning something, of really taking responsibility. I think that's a pretty pure positive message for me. Yeah. That's the way I take it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's what it's about, man. I mean, that's what I've been aiming for in my music, for my lyrics for a long time, which is actually saying things that I don't want to say. When I'm saying something that I don't want to say, I know that I'm saying the right thing. It's about pushing forward, and claiming responsibility so that you can face it. I mean, I've talked about this interview so much, part of me writing in the songs, these messages that, people think the messages for them, it is, but it's written so that I read it, so that I hear it, so it becomes my mantra. And so that I face up to things, and so that I hold on at times, so I don't want to disappear. And I tell myself it's going to be okay.
Sam, it's been totally fucking awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Giles.
I think the one thing that fascinates me, and I hope the people who listen to this podcast, is that, the whole idea of, you weren't trying to get on a label to do someone else's blueprint. You were doing you. And I think that's so empowering.
Yeah. For the people that love us, you can appreciate that. And for the people that don't like us, we're going to keep doing what we do.
Excellent.
That is what we do.
Excellent. So just to end on, I mean, what's your life like now in terms of your routine? What's a normal day? I mean, what's a normal day for you in lockdown like? Are you in Sweden right now, or you're in America?
I'm in Baltimore because I came home for the album release and the live stream and everything. But yeah, me and my partner were separated for 5 months because of the pandemic, and then I was just able to get over there in August for 5.5 weeks. I was there, and then I had to come right back, and I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't. So I'm supposed to fly out in a couple days, and I hope that everything goes smoothly. But when I'm home, like my pandemic days were, I wake up, make a pot of coffee, and then turn on my PlayStation and play FIFA for like 12 hours.
Who do you play with? What team do you play?
Well, I do the future, the ultimate team. And just building, just getting destroyed by like 13-year-old kids, just like kids saying the meanest things to me all the time. I'm just like, I'm trying to get better. I'm trying so hard. But yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a lot. The first couple months was me trying not to look at the situation as it was. So it took some time to be able to be creative again. And to start opening myself up to the feelings of what was really happening. Cause it was scary, not knowing when I was going to see my partner again was a really heavy thing.
Yeah. I can't even imagine.
I got really close with two of my roommates. So we started doing like pasta Tuesday, which is, one of us makes a homemade pasta, like hand rolled pasta. And then somebody makes this homemade sauce, and somebody makes homemade dessert, and
sounds like it's made with love.
Yeah, those were really, and we still do it. I mean, we did it last week. We made 3 lasagnas. Like everybody made their own lasagna. It was intense.
That is a good night. Yeah, that's got to be a good night.
Just 3 Garfields hanging out. Just Chuck and Zag. Yeah.
Amazing. You mentioned just briefly earlier. I mean, now the record's out, you can think about the next thing. Is that true? I mean, we're literally recording this 4 days on from the record release.
Yeah, and I mean, there's already a couple songs that were written in the last few months. But I've got like a folder of 12 or 11 tracks that the guys have sent me over the last 6-7 months, and I just started digging into them yesterday, very mindfully, and thinking about what I can do here and what I can do there. So I'm always excited to get a record out of the system, because it goes from being our record that we work really hard on to being your record. You know what I mean? It's like once the record is out, then it can't be taken back. And so it just lives on in other people's lives, and we move forward and we start writing these feelings. Cause what happens is you're writing an album, and then when it comes out, some of those songs and those feelings are 1.5, 2 years old. Maybe even 4 or 5 years old sometimes. So it is really, it's a release in more than one way, it's a release of that off into the world. The baby goes off to school, and then you start working on the next one and working through these feelings, cause we haven't even really touched on the pandemic as a feeling. I've only written one song about those emotions, and that was really only 3 months ago. But that song is really good. It's not on this record. It's in the demos on my computer, but it's really good. But so that's exciting for me. Just opening up creatively again.
Brilliant. Well, Sam, I can't wait to hear that banger that you got in your folder.
Oh yeah, I know you can't.
Oh God, I'm so excited to sit with this one that's just come out. So much time to sit with a record.
Yeah, it's so much time. Hopefully people take a few days or a week at least. Like, we spent a couple years on it, so give us that.
Excellent. All right, Sam, Thank you so much, man.
Yeah, Giles, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
So that was Samuel T. Herring. If you enjoyed the show, please share it far and wide. It's the most helpful thing you can do for this podcast while I'm trying to hack the mainframe. Nice one. Here's Sparrer showing you the way out.
I've been working all day for me mate on the side, running around like a blue-ass fly. I've been working all day for me mate. Every bleeding minute I've been on the go, up and down the ladder like a fiddler's elbow. I've been working all day for me mate.
This is a Mighty Moon Media podcast.